Usually when you leave a doctor's office with a like a life-changing diagnosis, they just hand you a prescription.
Right.
And it's inherently medical. You get this biological game plan, like take this medication, schedule physical therapy, maybe alter your diet to manage the
Which
symptoms.
is necessary, obviously,
Right.
but it operates in a vacuum.
Yeah.
It assumes the only thing breaking down is your biology, and it
Mm.
totally ignores the massive, like, structural earthquake happening in the rest of your life.
Exactly. But what if they handed you a spreadsheet along with that prescription?
Oh, that would change everything.
Right. What if your neurologist sat down and literally prescribed a comprehensive financial strategy as like a mandatory part of your medical treatment?
I mean, that paradigm shift is
Yeah.
exactly the core of what we're unpacking today.
It really is. We are doing a deep dive into this landmark 2012 presentation. It's called Invest in Yourself. And it's this massive roadmap built by a coalition of experts from the National Disability Institute, the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America, and a bunch of other financial groups.
Yeah. Their whole mission was to build a complete survival guide for financial wellness when you're navigating a chronic illness.
Yeah.
With a really heavy focus on multiple sclerosis, or MS.
Right. And today, our goal is to basically distill that entire presentation into a functional toolkit for you. We're going to translate all those complex mechanics of insurance, investing, public benefits, and turn them into actionable strategy.
Because when we talk about financial wellness, it's easy to just picture a vault full of gold coins or something.
Yeah, like Scrooge McDuck.
Exactly.
Sure.
But the presenters here, they ground that definition in reality. They define financial wellness as a set of behaviors designed to limit stress, and specifically, limiting the impact of that stress on your daily life.
Because if you are living with a chronic condition like MS, stress isn't just an emotional state, right? It's a documented medical trigger.
Yes, financial panic physically exacerbates neurological and autoimmune symptoms. So getting your spreadsheet healthy is quite literally a medical intervention to stabilize your physical body.
That is just so wild to think about. But to understand why this intervention is so critical, we really have to look at the raw data they compiled. And the poverty gap is, it's jarring.
It really is.
In the data they cited, for adults ages 18 to 64 without disabilities, the poverty rate was 12.8%. But for individuals with disabilities, that rate more than doubles to 27.3%.
And zooming in on the MS community reveals an even more precarious situation. A survey from the MSAA and the National Disability Institute found that 55.1% of surveyed households with MS earn less than $35,000 annually.
Wow, under 35K.
Yeah, and over 71% of those respondents did not have enough savings to cover just 3 months of expenses.
That is terrifying.
It is. And nearly 67% stated outright that their financial situation worsened significantly after their diagnosis.
But the real tragedy here is that this financial decline, it isn't just a natural consequence of getting sick. The system itself actively manufactures this poverty through what the presenters identify as the benefit trap.
Yes, the benefit trap.
Yeah.
Let's break down the mechanics of that because it's so important.
So for millions of working-age adults with disabilities, survival basically depends on public benefits, right? For housing, food, crucial health care like Medicaid or Medicare.
Right.
But the eligibility for these life-saving programs is tied to incredibly strict income limits.
You are systematically penalized for earning too much.
Exactly.
Like if you get a promotion at work or you take on extra hours, that slight bump in your paycheck could push you over the income threshold.
Yeah.
And that causes you to lose a medical benefit that might be paying for a $5,000 a month medication.
So you're forced into this impossible corner. You either stunt your career and stay in poverty, or you take the raise and lose the health care that's literally keeping you alive.
It's a systemic failure.
Yeah.
And that is exactly why Michael Morris from the National Disability Institute argues in this presentation that no group in America is more in need and more deserving of economic recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. And fighting back against that systemic trap requires, well, proactive defense. You have to protect your income before a health crisis forces your hand.
Right, which Kenneth Mitchell, he's one of the leading voices in this presentation, he frames this as thinking differently.
Yeah.
You have to build Plan B while you are still fully employed and capable.
And he introduces this highly practical tool to do this called the productivity matrix. Because, when you're facing fading physical or cognitive capacities, it's easy to just spiral into panic.
Oh, for sure.
But the matrix forces you to turn that abstract fear into objective, measurable data.
It acts as an audit, basically, of your functional capacity versus your job description.
Okay, so how does that actually work? How do you map that out?
So you sit down and map out 3 categories of capacity: physical, cognitive, and emotional. This means charting your current memory, your physical strength, your mobility, your focus, your daily endurance.
Got it. And then you plot those actual capabilities against the demands of your specific job. And you categorize those demands as necessary, frequent, sometimes, or never.
Exactly. And by doing this, you isolate the exact point of friction. Like if your job requires frequent cognitive focus, but your MS is causing severe, mid-afternoon brain fog,
Right.
you're no longer just vaguely feeling like you're failing at your job. You have identified a specific, measurable gap between demand and capacity.
It's kind of like the dashboard in your car.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, like when the check engine light comes on, you don't instantly abandon the vehicle on the side of the highway, right? The dashboard is giving you an early diagnostic warning that a specific part needs maintenance before the engine completely stalls.
Yes. And that diagnostic warning gives you leverage. Instead of waiting to be fired for underperformance, you use the data from your productivity matrix to request highly specific accommodations.
Under the ADA, right, the Americans with Disabilities Act.
Exactly. You don't just go to HR and say, I'm tired. You say, my role requires frequent cognitive endurance, which my condition impacts after 2 p.m. So I am formally requesting to shift my deep focus tasks to the morning and administrative tasks to the afternoon.
Oh, wow. So you completely take the emotion out of it and make it just a structural adjustment.
Exactly. Or if the matrix reveals that no accommodation can bridge the gap, it gives you the runway to proactively pivot your career to a different field before you lose your income entirely.
But we do have to address the scenario where the dashboard just flashes red across the board. Like, what is the mechanism when structural adjustments fail and you simply cannot perform the duties of your job anymore?
Well, that plunges you directly into the incredibly dense machinery of disability insurance. And the very first hurdle the presentation clears up is a misconception about what disability insurance actually is.
Right. It's not an entitlement program.
No, it is a legally binding contract.
Yeah.
You are entirely bound by the specific wording of the policy you or your employer holds. And the most dangerous clause in group disability insurance is the pre-existing condition limitation.
Yes. Let's talk about that, because most group policies have a 1-year pre-existing period. Mechanically, this means if you received medical treatment or consultation for a condition, like MS, in the 3 months immediately prior to becoming eligible for the insurance policy, the insurance company will completely exclude that condition from coverage for your first year on the job.
Which on the surface sounds like a total death knell, right?
Yeah.
If you have MS, you are constantly receiving treatment. It feels like you're permanently locked out of coverage.
It really does. But if we look closely at the mechanics of that clause, there's actually a massive silver lining.
Right.
The exclusion only lasts for 1 year.
Yes. If you can maintain your employment for 12 months and 1 day, that pre-existing condition clause vanishes. You are now fully covered, even for the MS.
Wow.
And this is drastically different from trying to buy an individual private policy on the open market after a diagnosis, where you'd likely just be denied coverage entirely. So group coverage through an employer remains a highly viable safety net.
Okay, so once you actually need to trigger that safety net, you have to understand how private long-term disability, or LTD, interacts with the federal government's Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, because they're fundamentally different beasts.
Oh, yeah. And they collide in ways that catch a lot of people off guard.
Big time. So SSDI operates on this incredibly strict universal definition of disability. To qualify, you must prove you are medically incapable of performing any occupation in the national economy.
Right. Not just your previous job, any job.
And the bureaucratic friction is just immense. I mean, it can take months or even years of appeals to get an approval.
Meanwhile, private LTD often utilizes an own occupation definition for the first year or two. You only have to prove that your condition prevents you from doing your specific job.
So because of that lower initial threshold, private LTD serves as this critical financial bridge. It deploys capital relatively quickly, keeping a roof over your head while you endure that grueling timeline of the SSDI approval process.
Exactly.
So private LTD is basically the lifeboat that deploys the second your ship sinks. And SSDI is the massive government rescue ship that takes 2 years to find you.
I like that.
But here is the mechanism that frustrates so many people. When the government rescue ship finally arrives, the lifeboat company demands some of their supplies back.
Yes. The technical term for this is an offset. Almost every private LTD policy contains a clause requiring you to apply for SSDI. And once you're finally approved and the government starts paying you a monthly benefit, your private LTD provider will subtract that exact government amount from the check they send you.
Which feels entirely counterintuitive, right? You pay premiums for a private policy, but the private company gets to use your federal benefits to subsidize their payout.
It feels incredibly punitive to the individual. But the presentation outlines the actuarial math behind it. If insurance companies did not offset those costs, the premiums for group LTD would be astronomically high. Like so high that most employers would stop offering it entirely.
Right.
Plus, the offset ensures that an individual cannot mathematically make more money by combining two disability payouts than they did when they were working full-time.
That makes sense. But it really highlights why reading the fine print of your specific contract is non-negotiable. Like, you need to know if your LTD benefits are taxable, which they typically are unless your employer utilized specific post-tax payroll maneuvers when paying the premiums.
Yes. And you also need to audit your geographical advantages.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the presentation specifically notes that residents of states like California, New York, New Jersey, Hawaii, and Rhode Island have access to state-mandated temporary disability programs.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like in New York, for instance, the laws around pre-existing conditions in these state programs are vastly more forgiving. They often just delay benefits rather than denying them outright.
Okay, so let's follow the timeline here. You've used the matrix. You've navigated the pre-existing conditions. You've secured your fixed income through LTD or SSDI. So you are financially surviving the immediate health crisis.
Right.
But the presentation shifts gears here because surviving isn't the same as thriving. We have to talk about growing that safety net, which means diving into Investing 101.
Yes, and the presenter for this section, Marlene Ware, establishes a vital baseline by separating saving from investing.
Two very different things.
Completely different. Saving is purely defensive. You're locking the principal amount away just to ensure it doesn't disappear. Investing is the deliberate act of delaying current consumption, accepting calculated risk, and deploying that money to make it multiply over time.
And the mechanism of that multiplication is compound interest. She illustrates it beautifully with the rule of 72.
I love the rule of 72.
It's so simple, right? If you take the number 72 and divide it by your expected annual interest rate, you get the exact number of years it takes for your money to double. So an investment returning 6% will double your money every 12 years.
And to capture those returns, the presentation bypasses complex day trading and focuses on the big three fundamental vehicles: stocks, bonds, and mutual funds.
Okay, but I want to pause you right there because if I'm listening to this and I remember this statistic from Section 1 that over 70% of this community doesn't even have 3 months of basic living expenses saved.
Right.
I'm probably thinking, why on earth are we talking about the stock market? How much financial risk can someone dealing with the physical and financial volatility of a chronic illness realistically take on?
It is a vital question, and it requires reframing what risk actually means in this context.
Okay, how so?
If you are surviving on a fixed income like LTD or SSDI, the greatest threat to your survival is not market volatility, it's inflation.
Ah, the silent drain.
Precisely. If you park all your money in a traditional savings account, it is functionally losing purchasing power every single year as the cost of groceries, housing, and healthcare rises.
So true.
Therefore, investing is not some luxury for the wealthy. It is a mandatory defensive mechanism to ensure your fixed income actually covers your expenses a decade from now.
Yeah, you aren't investing to buy a yacht, right? You're investing so you can still afford electricity in 10 years.
Exactly. But because a chronic illness brings cognitive fatigue and, unpredictable medical crises, active investing where you research and pick individual stocks is a terrible strategy. The cognitive load is just too high.
Which is why the presentation heavily emphasizes index funds and life cycle funds. So an index fund automatically mirrors a broad slice of the market, like the S&P 500. It requires zero active management and carries drastically lower fees.
And a life cycle fund takes it a step further. It's a pre-mixed portfolio tied to a specific target retirement date. So when you're younger, It automatically holds a more aggressive mix to maximize growth. And as you age, the algorithm automatically rebalances the fund, shifting your money into highly stable bonds to protect your capital.
Right.
It is completely hands-off, set it and forget it mechanism.
It removes the psychological and cognitive burden of wealth management, totally allowing you to focus your energy on managing your health while your money just fights inflation in the background.
Exactly.
But wait, if we successfully execute this defensive strategy and those life cycle funds grow and compound over a decade, we hit a massive structural contradiction here.
The benefit trap.
Yes. Does accumulating this wealth trigger the benefit trap we discussed at the very beginning?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to meticulously build a financial safety net only to have the government strip away our health care?
This is the crux of the entire presentation,
Yeah.
really. And it requires drawing an impenetrable line between the two primary federal disability programs. Elizabeth Jennings maps out this distinction perfectly.
Okay, let's start with SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance. We established that this is based on your past work credits.
Right. And here is the most crucial mechanical fact of this entire deep dive. SSDI has no asset limit. None.
Wait, none at all. So you can aggressively invest in index funds, you can own real estate, you can max out retirement accounts, and it has absolutely zero impact on your eligibility for your monthly SSDI check or the Medicare coverage that accompanies it.
Yes, exactly. You can build as much wealth as you want. However, the landscape changes entirely when we look at the other program, SSI, or Supplemental Security Income.
Right, because SSI is a needs-based program for individuals with minimal work history and extremely low income. And the limits aren't just strict, they are punitive.
To maintain eligibility for SSI and the Medicaid health care that comes with it, your total countable assets must remain under $2,000 for an individual, or $3,000 for a couple.
That is just the financial glass ceiling. $2,000 is barely enough to cover a transmission repair on a car. But if you practice good financial habits and your savings account hits $2,001, you shatter that glass ceiling, and the bureaucratic vacuum instantly sucks away your monthly income and your healthcare coverage.
And the government calculates countable assets ruthlessly. It includes cash, checking accounts, stocks, bonds, life insurance policies, and retirement accounts. Essentially, any asset that you have the legal right to convert into cash to pay for food or shelter counts toward that $2,000 limit.
So if you are relying on SSI, how do you mathematically escape poverty without losing your healthcare? It sounds impossible.
Well, you have to utilize highly specific legal exemptions. The system provides escape hatches, but you have to know exactly where they are.
Right.
The presentation points out standard exemptions, like the home you actively live in and one vehicle used for transportation. Those do not count toward the $2,000. But the most powerful mechanisms for building true wealth while on SSI are special needs trusts and individual development accounts, or IDAs.
Okay, a special needs trust is fascinating because it's like a legal force field. If I'm understanding the mechanics correctly, the wealth is legally separated from the individual.
That is the exact mechanism. A properly drafted special needs trust holds assets for your benefit, but you do not have direct legal ownership or control over those funds. The trust is managed by a trustee.
Oh, I see.
So if you need a new wheelchair or you need to pay for a home modification, the trustee pays the vendor directly. The cash never touches your personal bank account.
And because the cash never enters your possession, the government cannot count it toward your $2,000 SSI limit. You get the benefit of the wealth without triggering the penalty.
Exactly. And the other tool, the individual development account, operates on a different mechanism. IDAs are special government-approved matched savings accounts designed for low-income individuals. You agree to save money for a highly specific goal, like pursuing higher education, purchasing a first home, or capitalizing a small business.
And the money in that specific IDA bucket is fully exempt from the SSI limits while you're saving for that goal. So it's not that you can't build a safety net on SSI, it's that you have to aggressively direct your capital into these legally protected silos.
Yes, which brings the entire Invest in Yourself presentation full circle. The rules of the system are rigid, complex, and honestly, often unfair. But they are navigable if you possess the mechanical knowledge of how they operate.
So what does this mean for you, the listener, right now? The experts who built this presentation were adamant that you shouldn't just passively absorb this data. You really need to operationalize it. The immediate directive is to sit down and physically write out a vision for your financial future.
And then you select just one single step to execute in the next 3 months.
Just one.
Right? Do not attempt to rewire your entire financial life today. Maybe your first step is simply filling out the productivity matrix to objectively audit your job capacity.
Right.
Or perhaps it's calling an attorney to understand the mechanics of setting up a special needs trust. Just choose one tactical move.
Looking at the sheer depth of this presentation, it forces a radical change in how we view chronic illness. Like, as a society, we tend to view disability almost exclusively through a biological lens. We treat the physical symptoms, but remain entirely blind to the economic devastation occurring in the background.
We throw medication at the disease, but we ignore the empty bank account generating the cortisol and stress that makes the disease actively worse. If we synthesize the core message of this presentation, it demands that we elevate financial literacy to the exact same level as biological health care.
It's so true, because teaching someone how to deploy an index fund against inflation, or how to legally shield their assets in a trust to escape the benefit trap, isn't just financial advice. Empowering